For the second Winter Olympics in a row, I get to cover at least one member of the Seattle Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're bringing you your favorite team every single day. My name is Erica L. Ayala, and as I alluded to in my cold open, I am a credentialed media member for the 2026 Milano Cortina Olympics. This will be my second Olympics and the second ever that I will have at least one member of the Seattle Kraken to cover. That is because Philipp Grubauer will be headed to the Winter Olympics with Team Germany. Now, we had the qualifying teams announce the first 6 players to represent their organizations. A little slow roll here. Also a way to, kind of hype up NHL players returning to the Olympics. So Philipp Grubauer, congratulations, stick taps. For those who were around in the early years, my everydayers and my OGers, then especially my OGers, then I also covered Matty Beniers at the Winter Olympics. That was a wild and crazy Winter Olympics. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is much better. Had a wild situation there. Did our best to get content out, but have a little bit of a better plan, some support, and I'm super excited. So yeah, Philipp Grubauer headed to the Olympics, and he is still at the Seattle Kraken. I, for one, was one of those people. Again, if you listen every day, if you are an OG listener, you know that I wasn't really sure. I'm a little surprised, actually, that Philipp Grubauer not, from what we know, going to be bought out. He is, as of now, with the team, and we'll talk about the new coaching staff that was also named. His name keeps being brought up, so the Seattle Kraken are not moving on from Philipp Grubauer. He will represent Team Germany at the Olympics. But let's talk about who else is headed to the Olympics. There are some mutuals. Let's start with France. Former, I should say. There are some former players here. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who played for the Seattle Kraken, unfortunately suffered an injury even before that Winter Classic. So he will be headed to the Olympics representing Team France. You have Oliver Bjorkstrand headed to the Olympics for Team Denmark. We've talked about that. I got to talk to Ali during the All-Star weekend where he represented the Seattle Kraken. Infamous now, he had already planned a vacation, and then it's like, nope, you're our guy. So he will represent Team Denmark. Tomas Tatar will play for Slovakia. So congratulations. Tardy for the party? I don't think so. We have, as I mentioned, Philipp Grubauer for Team Germany. Then there are players that are named, obviously, for the other teams: Switzerland, Czechia, Italy, Sweden, and Finland, as well as Latvia, Canada, and the United States. However, just talking about the players that have overlap with the Seattle Kraken. But I will tell you the players for North America, since I would argue, according to our YouTube data, that probably a high chance that our listeners and watchers, viewers on Locked On Kraken are interested in that. For the United States, Austin Matthews, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, Quinn Hughes, and Charlie McAvoy. For Canada, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Braden Point, and Sam Reinhart. Congratulations to him and the Florida Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk, I should say, as well, for winning the Stanley Cup. We'll talk a little bit about that later on the show. But the NHL returning to the Olympics, I, for one, never really understood why you wouldn't. I'll put it this way. I understand the business argument to not have NHL players play in international tournaments. And for a lot of people, playing for their country the highest of the high as an athlete in pretty much every sport. So I'm glad that the NHL worked things out. The Olympic tournament is 12 nations that have qualified. Again, that's the United States, Canada, Latvia, Finland, Sweden, Italy, Czechia, Switzerland, Germany, Slovakia, Denmark, and France. And so each of those teams will ultimately have a 25-player roster that will be named closer to the start of the Milano Cortina Games. They will open February 6th. And this marks the return of NHL players to the Olympics for the first time since Sochi. And so, again, 6 players from each team named. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that they kind of did this 6-player rollout. I will also share with regard to the International Ice Hockey Committee that Russia and Belarus have been suspended from IIHF tournaments. And so the Russian team for the men's and women's tournament were replaced. And so that's how actually France and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare get to the Olympics, because of the Russian ban. The groups for the 2026 men's hockey tournament will be Group A: Canada, Switzerland, Czechia, and France. Again, they replaced Russia. Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, and Italy are in Group B. And Group C is Denmark, Latvia, Germany, and the United States. So it's going to be really interesting to see these teams square off, how they build out the rest of the teams. We did get to see Joey Daccord, Matty Beniers, Mikey Simon, as well as Riker Evans and Brandon Montour, active players, represent their countries. We also had Ellie Tolvanen represent Team Finland, Oscar Molgaard for Team Denmark. So those are some players potentially that we could see again suit up for their respective countries at the Olympics. Now, again, this is where the Seattle Kraken not necessarily performing their best, and therefore our individual players not performing their best, that could have an impact on what we see here. But yeah, congratulations. Philipp Grubauer, though, is, I think, the big story here. Might have some other active players that go to the Olympics, but considering that there's been so much turmoil, I honestly, I don't think the organization put a lot of respect on Philipp Grubauer's name in this past season. So, I mean, I do wish the best for Philipp Grubauer, not only because there's, if he performs at his best, and that's going to help the Seattle Kraken, but I know that he's been a mainstay, so to speak, for Team Germany for a little bit here. And I want to see him do well. And I also am pretty excited that I'll get to see him in Milano Cortina, as I am a credentialed member. I think I might have told y'all at Locked On Kraken, but we'll be also writing for Olympics.com. So I will definitely have the inside scoop when it comes to getting to chat with some of these athletes on the men's and women's side of the tournament. No word on exactly how or when we'll get the women's national teams. Again, I think this is more of a hype for the NHL players in particular, naming the first 6. So there you go. What are your thoughts about Philipp Grubauer representing his country, Team Germany, in the Olympics? And who from the Kraken do you think has a good chance to also punch their ticket, so to speak, to Milano Cortina? Of course, as someone who will be there live, boots on the ground, I will definitely be talking about this more. But coming up, Philipp Grubauer is reunited with a coach that he got to spend some time with last season, and a coach that helped Joey Daccord in the AHL. That's right. Lane Lambert and Jason Botterill have named the rest of the coaching staff for the 2025-26 season. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at a wonderful pistachio. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber, and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller for longer. If you like the shelled version, like that Zen process of just being able to crack open your wonderful pistachios and hopefully in an orderly and neat fashion throw away your shells, Wonderful Pistachios is for you. If you are in the ain't nobody got time for that category and crew, don't worry. Wonderful Pistachios also has something for you with the shellless variety. Great grab and go snack when you're in the gym, when you're in your car, listening to Locked On Kraken, of course, you can still get your fiber on. So, uh, get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit Wonderful Pistachios to learn more. Thank you for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, whether it's your first listen of the day, your midday listen, or you're listening at night while getting ready to wind down. We appreciate you. And what we also appreciate is that we have a new coaching staff. Welcome to Seattle, Aaron Sneakloth, Chris Taylor, and Colin Zulianello. And we talked about Aaron Sneakloth a little bit, Chris Taylor also joining up as an assistant coach. Colin Zulianello is from our Coachella Valley Firebirds organization. So there's overlap with Jessica Campbell, overlap with some of our players, including Philipp Grubauer and Joey Decord. Colin will be our goalie coach. I'm going to read from the announcement here. I'm excited to have Aaron, Chris, and Colin join our coaching staff. Each of them brings a wealth of experience and a unique voice to the locker room. And Colin's familiarity with the goalies in our system will be a huge benefit heading into the upcoming season. That is a quote from head coach Lane Lambert. We also saw there was a write-up on NHL.com/Kraken. Let's see. This was written by Bob Condor. Okay, that's what I thought. Bob Condor wrote this one. Talks about the coaching staff. I will say, and maybe this is me reading into the tea leaves a little bit too much, but there does seem to be an emphasis and them kind of saying, yeah, we're not buying out Philipp Grubauer without them saying we're not buying out Philipp Grubauer. But even in that quote that I just read to you, familiarity with the coaches, with the goalies in the system, in Bob Condor's article, it's also mentioned Zulianello, 46, served as Coachella Valley goalie coach and worked extensively with Joey Decord during the team's 2023 conference championship run, while drawing high praise from Philipp Grubauer last season when the netminder joined the Firebirds for a stint. So we did get quotes from Joey Decord about Zulianello. He leans into the quote-unquote human element that Zulianello can bring, and that helped the AHL playoff run, and also has helped with Nico Coco and his growth and development. This is from Joey Decord. Colin really cares and is just so passionate about us as people and his goalies. We created an awesome relationship and friendship. He's been super helpful to me. I value his opinion and coaching so much. Coming from a teaching background, you can tell because of the way he's able to get his message across. And so Zulianello, and again, Bob goes into a lot of detail here, which I find a little bit interesting. Not only because I find it interesting to get to know the guy a little bit better, but I'm again maybe reading into the tea leaves here a little bit, but there's an emphasis in some of the information here on being a natural educator, being able to, meet people where they're at, different things about personality, passionate people. There's also a section where they talk about and there's a quote from Lambert on just that. We put a real emphasis on finding people that are adept at a teaching and development style, but also mixing in coaches that have had success who are in a position to help our team have success at the NHL level. It's a twofold process. And this is what we've been kind of talking about. I think it's more of a hybrid rebuild than it's not a retool, it's not a full rebuild. It's not it's not a win next year. I do think we're in a hybrid rebuild. And so yeah. So getting people that have that development angle but also have met success is important. It is vital to trust in people to do their jobs. The cohesiveness of the staff and the chemistry of the staff, it can't be overstated. You spend upwards of 300 days a year all in the same room and at times 14 hours a day. There's got to be real chemistry there. That's one of the reasons this process took a while. First and foremost, we're looking for the right people, the right fit, good people, and we feel we've found that with these three individuals. That's Lane Lambert talking. And so again, just really talking about culture, talking about fit here. Jessica Campbell will also be a part of this, and Zulianello, of course, has ties to Jessica Campbell. That was mentioned in Bob Condor's article. That's up on NHL.com/Kraken. So yeah, new coaching staff. I still am hoping to get Jessica Campbell on now that we have the full coaching staff. Hopefully she soon will join us to talk a little bit about what to expect in her second season as an NHL bench boss. I still do find it interesting that she's the carryover. I want this to work for her, and I'm very curious. I've said this on a few episodes, the OGers, the everydayers, this, but what is not only the expectation from the organization, but how is the organization going to kind of promote and facilitate growth opportunities, learning opportunities for Jessica Campbell? I'm always very curious in how that plays out, what the balance is there, etc. So here's hoping that that they can figure something out. But only time will tell. We'll have to see how everything plays out. But that's your coaching staff. And now we have a coaching staff in place. We are getting close to the draft. And of course, July 1st, free agency. But coming up as we close out the show, let's talk about some, over the hill guys that just won an NHL Stanley Cup. That's right. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers for going back to back, and some guys that we've been talking about as unrestricted free agents now winning a cup. I love beating the narrative that I find completely ageist. But, I'll take you to some of what Armando Velez says about this series, about the win coming up on Locked On Kraken. Hey there, gentle listener. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, whether we are your first listen of your day, your midday listen, or if you listen late at night, quiet storm style. We appreciate you. Erica L. Ayala closing out the show. Let's talk about the Florida Panthers, who win their second consecutive Stanley Cup final. I was hoping to have the clips available from our hosts, but we will talk about that on tomorrow, Wednesday's show. But I mean, this was a pretty dominant performance. 5-1. Edmonton did get on the board very late. 2 empty net goals for the Florida Panthers. Sam Reinhart himself, 4 goals in this game. The other goal came from Matthew Tkachuk. And just start to finish, soup to nuts, this was a dominant performance. Oilers actually had more shots on goal, 29-25. Neither team on the power play, so something we hadn't seen in the series. That was talked about a lot on the broadcast. Ricky Olczyk Ricky, hello. Nikki, nope, not him either. Eddie Olczyk was on the call. If we look at the shot chart here in this game per natural stat trick, again, most of this game was played 5-on-5, but toggled to the all. And Florida able to get to the net, but the Oilers were not. And so, again, natural stat trick with their shot chart, captivating that pretty easily. I mean, if you watched the game, you pretty much saw this. But, Edmonton, a little bit of activity, but they really weren't able to get anything going through the slot as far as activity. Again, did get something right in front of net. That's how they got their one goal off of just an odd bounce. Bobrovsky made the initial save and then lost track of the puck. One or two bodies there, and Edmonton able to capitalize. But you can see a lot of activity in front of Skinner for the Florida Panthers, and they're getting into the slot, north and south, and really staying within the dots. Whereas the Oilers were pushed up top, forced up top a lot here. We see in this heat map shot chart. I mean, we're gonna have to have Armando on the show. He's gonna be a busy guy once again in this off season. And congrats. Great listen. If you're not listening to Armando Velez already, he's squad casted with me. We got to hang out for All-Star when it was in Florida. That was pretty awesome. Congrats again to the Florida Panthers. Sam Reinhart, 4 goals in this game. 4 goals, 2 empty netters in this game. Pulling the goalie is a tactic, a strategy. I think Edmonton pulled Skinner for the first time within just under 7 minutes. They were losing 3-0 at the time. Then they got the first empty netter. Florida, that is. And then they went back to it. And Florida got 2 empty net goals late in the game. Not a shutout. Edmonton did score late in the game after, I think it was the second empty netter. I can look, or maybe it was in between the two. Either way, the game was pretty much in hand. No, it was after. It was after Reinhart's 4th goal. Oof, Sam Reinhart. But your Conn Smythe winner, none other than a guy we've talked about with regard to UFAs, unrestricted free agents, Sam Bennett. Reinhart, 29 years old, 4 goals tonight. Sam Bennett, 28 years old. And so I'm curious. I think another reason why I find the quote unquote wrong side of 30 conversation so interesting in men's hockey is also because, like, some of these guys, to me, they look well in their 30s, but they're not. They're not. Like, I had no idea looking at Sam Bennett that he's 28 years old, born in 1996. I mean, the guy looks like he's got pretty good skin. Maybe it's the beard. Is it the playoff beard? Short hair, some guys, cutting it short. As the hairline changes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's also why I have a little bit of issue, because I'm thinking these guys are already on the quote unquote wrong side of 30, but they're not. Edmonton is the oldest team in the league as of last year, going by the 2024-25 rosters, average age of 30.3. The Florida Panthers are the 15th youngest team at an average age of 28.2. The average age for the Seattle Kraken is 28.7. That puts them 21st from youngest, which is the Buffalo team, Buffalo Sabres at 25.3, to the oldest team, Edmonton, as I mentioned, 30.3. Yeah, okay. So the average age, it fits the bill of, quote unquote wrong side of 30. I just think it's such a wild term. I also have come to realize that I have no idea, just looking at these guys, how old they are. Anyway, Sam Bennett, they mentioned it on the broadcast as the Stanley Cup was making its way around UFA. Is he going to stay or is he going to go? Is he going to be available? I know a lot of folks for the Kraken don't want us to spend so heavily, especially on just one person. And I do think that makes sense. I'm so curious what the strategy, though, overall is going to be, because in a manner of speaking, Seattle got to get cracking. Got to have something cooking. So we've got a coaching staff now. So what does that hold for the future? Only time will tell. But again, congratulations to the Florida Panthers. We'll hear from some of our experts around the Locked On NHL network and some of the shows, including, of course, Locked On NHL Game Night crew, Armando Velez, who once again gets to celebrate in Florida. I will get to go to Florida in about a month and a half. Let's just call it 2 months for the Amerigo Latam Cup. Once again, the Florida Panthers, along with the NHL, NHLPA, putting together that tournament for quote unquote non-traditional hockey markets. So much fun. I call a lot of games, and I've been calling the championship games for almost every division for the last 3 seasons. And so excited to hop on the mic once again. But that is our show. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and a reminder to hold fast, to stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. We have a coaching staff. Woohoo! Draft and free agency up next. Congratulations to Philipp Grubauer and the rest of our former Seattle Kraken players for being announced to the 2026 Olympic roster. More to come about the draft, all of that in an upcoming episode. But I will catch you later. Peace out, everybody.